Hello and welcome to Filmi Ladies. I'm Beth and with me is Pitu. And returning is our special guest, Nihit. Hi, Nihit. Thank you for phoning in from India this morning / nighttime / evening. You're our favorite Filmi Lady guest.
We've got to do this once where it's like daytime or nighttime for me. So the both of you look puffy and not me.
Pitu never looks puffy.
I'm always happy.
We have invited one of our favorite guests here today to talk about the film that everybody's talking about, which is Kantara, which I'm pronouncing wrong, but they'll do it better than I will.
No, you're pronouncing it right.
I even had a sound file to practice with. I have not seen the movie. They have seen the movie. So I'm going to be trying to sort of organize some questions for them, but most of it will be them talking about this film that everyone is in love with. So let me start by telling you, I saw the trailer and I saw some of the songs. Based on what I've seen, here's what I understand this film to be about. Okay. Folklore, land disputes, buffalo, firecrackers, really great performance costumes, ritual something or other, maybe a love story, and people who go off into the forest. Fill in the rest for us, please. And spoilers are okay.
Yeah, you got it. You actually mentioned everything. There was the only element you didn't mention was Angry Young Man.
Oh yeah, he was there. Yeah.
So yeah, you almost got the whole plot, which is very surprising because I didn't watch the songs, but just based on the trailer, I had no idea what I was going into. I kind of thought that it's going to be an indie film for some reason because it's so beautifully shot and it looks so intimate in the trailer. I kind of felt like, because I was going with my partner and I was like, I have no idea what the film is about. And between the two of us, he's the person who looks up everything, who reads like all of the reviews, all of the ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, everything. And I like to go in completely blind. I don't want to know anything about the movie. So I was kind of going like that. And I didn't expect it to be like a out and out entertaining, like quintessentially masala movie in Bollywood terms. I felt like the trailer sold something else, but the movie was much more than what the trailer was. And yeah, you got almost all of the plot points, Beth. I must congratulate you because I was very confused by the trailer. And it turned out to be a really entertaining, most of all entertaining movie. And of course, it has a lot of political things. It has a lot of like subtext about caste and land politics and owners' rights and like a lot of folklore, folktale. It has a very like minute but very prominent sort of supernatural element to it. But yeah, you almost got it right. I would love to know what Preeti thought of it.
So I actually did not watch the trailer and I did not read a single review because I do not like the way that Indian trailers are shown. And I despise Indian reviewers with the exception of my friend Raja Sen, because my problem with Indian reviewers is that they tell you the whole story. I mean, I've read, I've read reviews of like whodunits in the past where they've been like, and then this happened, and then this is the suspect, and this is the killer. And I'm like, why should I even watch this movie at this point? So I just make it a point never to read any review before I go into the film. I literally only watched the film because it had been garnering a little bit of buzz, and you spoke so highly of it when we did the Majama episode. And I was like, okay, if Nihit is speaking so highly of it, I should go and see it. And it seemed like the kind of film that would be a really good big screen experience. And I was like, okay, I like the costumes, it looks really cool, let's go see it. And it has now become, I think, the highest rated Indian film on IMDb, apparently. And we went on a Tuesday night to this movie theater in Fremont. The Kantara was playing in Kannada as well as Telugu and in Hindi. And the Tuesday night shows were all sold out. Like we had bought a 10 p.m. No, we bought a 7:30 p.m. ticket. the 9 p.m. shows were sold out, the 10 p.m. shows were sold out. So like for a Tuesday night, that's insane. Who goes and watches movies on Tuesday night at 10 o'clock? Like, don't people have work? But I was like completely blown away. It was such a good experience. And the last 30 minutes were like madness. I think my husband actually stopped breathing because he was like this. Like he was just shocked. It was so good.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, so I did read some reviews since I didn't get to see it, at all, and I don't know when I'll get to. One of the themes that stood out to me from the reviews I read was justice. And I gathered that this is being justice, not in the like, that dirty cop killed my brother kind of way. Like this is a much richer sense of justice. So talk to me a little bit about whether that was a theme that struck you, and what are the other kind of big ideas in the movie that grabbed you as viewers.
You want to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. So justice, in the sense, there's a big justice debate about land ownership. And I think this is a issue that I don't think many films have spoken about before. Regional cinema, yes, maybe. I obviously haven't seen all of the regional cinema there is, but even in Marathi cinema, which is my language, so I watch most of Marathi films, I don't think the issue of ownership of land has been spoken about before. And it has a very nice commentary in the sense that it talks about who owns the land that we live on. Is it the people or the system? And the system keeps changing from like, it starts in the ancient times. So the system is like the king and the ruler of the land who owns the land, supposedly. And then he passes it on to the community that is living there. But then the system keeps changing from a ruler to the government to like all of these, like how our society has progressed. And then to current day, where like even the king's family, even the king's descendants are sort of bound to the government or bound to another agency in terms of their own land. So that was a very interesting take, and I did not expect it in a masala movie like this, but they've done it sort of very beautifully. It's meshed with the story very well, so that it's not boring and they're not just talking about, they're not being activists about it, but they've included it in a very natural way in the story, which was very nice. And I feel like, Pitu, like jump in if you want to, but I feel like this is a movie where I felt like it's like the Nagraj Manjule vibe of Sairat and all of his other films.
Yeah.
Also, like the quintessential Ajay Atul musical films. There are films like Jogwa and Natrang in Marathi, which are very similar in taste and color palette and, the issues that they speak about. So it was a very nice crossover between like Kannada and Marathi films, which I didn't expect, because every regional South Indian film has like a typical flavor and a palette and a way that they go about it. Like Malayalam films are very different from Tamil films, and we all know Telugu films are like RRR and boisterous and loud and like, they sell the big idea to people. So I didn't know this is actually the first Kannada film I've seen. I've never seen a Kannada film before because I've never seen KGF. I didn't expect a Kannada film to relate to Marathi films and like Ajay Atul musicals in that sense. And because it's folklore and Ajay Atul's music has got so much to do with folk tales and folk music, it was like a very nice parallel between the two. And thus the issue of like justice and land ownership also kind of felt like a new thing that maybe a Marathi film would have explored in the same way visually that this film did. So yeah, that was like really a surprise. And I like the way that they did it.
I think the justice thing for me was very interesting because I tend to be that person that when I'm watching movies or TV shows or whatever, where there's like this group of people who feels this way and then there's that group of people who feels that way, I tend to be that person that takes sides. So I'll always be like, well, I'm clearly on this person's side and that person has no idea what they're talking about. Like I just tend to pick a side because I just tend to be a very black and white person. That's one of the things about Kantara that impressed me but also made me very uncomfortable, is that I didn't know whose side I wanted to be on. Like on the one hand, I really felt for the villagers because I could tell that they just felt like the government, like the forestry officer and everyone was just like, arbitrarily coming and saying, oh, these are the lines, which actually reminded me a lot of partition movies, where it's basically Lord Mountbatten and the British coming and saying, oh yeah, I know this is a village and this is your house and this is your brother's house, but we're going to make a line in the middle and this is going to be Pakistan and this is going to be India, So it reminded me a little bit of that. So I really felt for the villagers, but then I also really felt like I also was siding with the forestry department, because at the same time you do read about all the environmentalism and all the environmental disasters that are waiting to happen in India, or you hear about how villagers in Kerala and a lot of places, or in the northeast or wherever, try to drive out animals and there's poaching and this and that. So I was like, well, I don't think Murli is wrong, the forestry officer. By the way, I named him Kannada the Rock, because he looked like that.
Yeah,
He looked like the Rock.
agree.
So, right? Kannada the Rock, Murli. So I sided with him too. And then I felt like I must be a complete moron. I probably am, because I felt like the landlord was a decent guy. I mean, yeah, he was clearly very casteist and elitist, but I was like, I think he's nice. So then when that rug was pulled out from under me and I was like, oh shit, he's horrible. That was no fun at all. So it was one of those movies that I think was written so well, and where they kind of like, they talked about so many different things that I just couldn't take aside, and it made it really hard for me to align myself with one person. And then actually I was very delighted when at the end, Murali from the forestry department, the Rock, and the villagers came together and then they fought against the landlord, and I was like, yay, finally I can pick my side. So that was, I think, that justice part of it. I was very engaged.
Yeah, I was saying that was very interesting also, because you kind of get all permutations and combinations throughout the movie. Like first you have the landowner versus the villagers, then you have the landowner with the villagers versus the forestry, and then the forestry joins the villagers against the landlord. So like all combinations are, it's possible. And
it's like a spy game. It's like those spy novels by like Graham Greene or something. It's like, no, I'm pro you. No, I'm actually pro you. No, wait, what is my pro?
Another of the ideas that comes up in the reviews I've read is talking about not only kind of looking at issues facing tribal cultures in contemporary India, but then also really rooting this story in actual cultural practices. Have you seen, so I'd love to hear your opinions about that. And also if you've seen any other Indian films from any language that that kind of get at contemporary tribal life or issues, because I'd really have to think about it if I've seen any. I'm not remembering.
When I think about tribal sort of vibes, I think of the Jabbar Patil movies, which were Marathi, because like Nihit, that's my mother tongue as well. So I'm of regional cinema. Marathi is probably the one that I'm most familiar with. And there's Jaitre Jait, and then there's Bhumika, I think. No, Bhumika was more like a little bit urban.
No, Bhumika,
but I think Jaitre Jait,
Bhumika was where she's an actress. I don't think that's the one. Yeah.
No, not that one. But like Jaitre Jait was definitely very like urban, and then rural. And then there's some movies also where there are some Marathi movies that I've seen where they had like all the Naxalwadis, like, the Naxalites and everything, and then the tribal element in that. But that's the sad thing. Like these movies that I'm referencing are literally movies from like the 70s/80s.
Yeah.
Since then, I haven't seen it. And one thing that really struck me is because even though I am a Bollywood fan, and Beth, you and I started this kind of like a Bollywood podcast, although we do talk about other Indian movies, one of the things I've been finding really irritating about Bollywood these days is this obsession with just like urban Bombay, South Bombay, Juhu, whatever things. And then there's like all these like annoying small town movies. In fact, our movie theater had a small intermission, like India style. And the ad that they showed us was Dr. G, the Ayushmann Khurrana movie that's come out. And it was god awful. It was the same North Indian small town bullshit. And the worst part was, he plays a gynecologist in the movie, so a lot of the things in the movie are set in like a medical college and stuff. And then there was, of course, like a hip hop / rap song where Ayushmann is dressed up. And I was like, this is so irritating. Like, why is there an interval where I've been taken out of this? So I think one of the things that I think filmmakers in India need to think about is that, are people really interested in consuming the same crap that is repackaged over and over, or are we interested in seeing something new and interesting? Because I knew absolutely nothing about these daivas, as they're called, these demigods in Karnataka, and like it's part of the Tulu culture. Apparently, I was reading up about it. I've never seen these dances, never heard of them, but they're so fascinating. And I actually went down a rabbit hole of looking up this boar-headed god and this Varaha avatar and everything. It was fun, it was cool. And I would rather see that than yet another idiotic movie where some random small towner is doing hip hop. So
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And just to speak to that point, yeah, the movies work. That's why they are made. And I don't know why they work in a particular template. Maybe people are just like numb to the kind of films that they are seeing, and they just want to go sit in a theater, and maybe like it's the escape that they search for. But those movies do work. Like Dr. G has done very good numbers for the kind of movie it is, for the budget that it's made on. So clearly people are liking it, and I haven't seen Dr. G, so I can't comment on whether it's good or bad. But yeah, that kind of template where it's like one minority problem with one hero, like who's mostly Ayushmann Khurrana nowadays, with one Punjabi DJ track in the background, is like a template that works. Yeah, exactly. And to come to Beth's point, I also can't think of a lot of movies that are set in like the specific culture that they talk about, or like are very true to them. But again, going back to Marathi films, I think not to sound like a broken record, but films by Nagraj, Manjule have done that to a great extent. Like Fandry is a beautiful example, if you guys have seen Fandry, and it's set in exactly the kind of setting that it talks about. It represents the people that it talks about very well. Something like Jogwa, I think, Beth, if you haven't seen Jogwa, you must watch it. Okay. It's beautiful. It's just conceptually so rich. And it's about Devdasis. And I don't know how much you know about Devdasis, but like, there are people who've dedicated their lives to God, so they are supposed to live in a particular type of way. And that community is represented so well in that movie, and the story is just gut-wrenching. You have to watch it. It's like one of my favorite films of all.
One recent movie that was very rooted in its milieu was actually Tumbbad. That was another one where like the sense of place, exactly. Sense of geography, the monsoons, the color palette, the outfits, everything, the dialect, everything was spot on. But other than that, I'm struggling to think of anything else.
The other Bollywood example that comes to mind, which is the only Bollywood example that comes to mind, which was true to its essence in that sort of way, is Sonchiriya. And like, what a beautiful film. Yeah. So like Sonchiriya, I needed to see subtitles, even though it was like a Hindi film. I didn't know what they were talking about because the dialect was so authentic and the way they spoke and behaved was so authentic. I needed subtitles throughout the film. I couldn't have understood the film without subtitles. So in that sense, it was very rooted to its milieu and it was very true to its characters. But yeah, not a lot of other films that come to mind in that sense.
Is Sonchiriya the one that stars Sushant Singh Rajput?
Yeah, he's a dacoit.
I haven't seen it, but okay.
Do you think that the specificity is one of the things that's really making this so successful, not just as a work, but also with audiences? Because obviously this film was caught on much more broadly, I think, than probably at least, people who don't know much about anything about it going in would have expected it to be. Like, if you just told me about it, I never would have guessed that it would even play in the US at all, frankly, right? But like, it's screening a bunch in the United States, for example. So do you think, what role do you think that plays in its popularity, and what are the other factors that you think are making it such a big hit?
I think for me, it was just the uniqueness of it. Because I just knew nothing about it. And I think for so many people, see, first of all, if you are an urban person, like if you're born and raised in Mumbai or Delhi or Bangalore or something, I don't know to what extent you're even familiar with like, rural life, or
Yeah.
familiar with these like age old traditions and stuff. I mean, how many Indians of our age are even religious? How many of us even practice a lot of ritualistic things and participate in any of these old things? So I think, first of all, for me, it was the uniqueness. I had no idea what they were talking about and what was going on, and that actually was really interesting and entertaining, because I couldn't zone out at all. I was just like, this is really cool. Even like, I will say I did enjoy Brahmastra very, very much. And I'm not saying that Brahmastra is anything like this, but even with Brahmastra, it was a little bit derivative at parts. It was kind of like, you could see the Harry Potter-y stuff, and then you could see the Star
Yeah.
Wars-y stuff in it. I do not know what to compare Kantara to. I have no idea. Even Ponniyin Selvan, which I enjoyed enormously. I mean, I at least know a little bit more about Tamil culture, and I know a little bit more about like, the royalty, like the Chola Empire and stuff like that. So it wasn't like that fantastical to me, but I knew absolutely nothing about this milieu, and I wanted to learn more about it. And so I think it was like the uniqueness of it. Like, when was the last time you saw something like this?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a very common sort of writing lesson, or like there's a writing theme where it says that the more personal you make something, the more universal it becomes. And that's so true, because these people, the makers of this film, have just gone all out and made a film that's so true to their own culture. And they've assumed that it'll be interesting to everybody else because they've been so honest about their own representing their own culture. So I think that works very well in the favor. The second thing is, it is like a, I don't know how to put this in the correct way, but we are living in the times where religion is a very big theme. And this is a film that takes religion very seriously, or at least like spirituality very seriously, and puts a lot of weight on that sort of a belief. So I think that's also got to be a big reason why it's working. Like, it's an idea that people relate to highly right now. It's not something that is not relatable in any way. And yeah, above that, what Pitu said, like, I had no idea what this would be, like I said, from the trailer. So if you're sitting in the theater, literally every scene is going to be a surprise for you, because you don't know what's coming next. And it is a very masala film. It's a very entertaining film, but the way they handle certain things, the way they handle caste politics, the way they handle just like the flow of the story is so good. Like, at the interval point, I was hating the people for putting an interval in the film, because I didn't want the interval to be there. And it's just the way Indian films work, and we have to put that there. But yeah, and we'll come to the climax later, because I actually had like a little bit of a out of body experience. And because I was such a big fan of the film, through and through the runtime of the film, the last 30 minutes sort of took me out for a second, and I'll tell you why when we come to that part. But yeah, it's a very unexpected movie. That's why, like, everybody who watches it has got to go out and recommend it, because they've not seen anything like this before. Like, when I spoke about it on the Majama podcast, which was like 2 weeks ago, I had seen it in its second week of release. And even then, even with Kannada and English subtitles, it was houseful everywhere. Like, when I decided to go and watch the film, there was a 7 o'clock show. And I was like, okay, I'll book the tickets at 6 o'clock. I don't think anybody is going to watch this random Kannada movie. And I went to the app and I got the third row from the screen. It was completely packed.
Yeah,
So,
same here. It's
yeah.
been packed in the US theaters as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And one fun experience this month particularly has been watching Ponniyin Selvan with a Tamil crowd, then watching Kantara with a Kannadiga crowd. And there are some things that people just laugh at, and the subtitles don't do justice to it. And like, me and my partner were both like, okay, we need to find out what this joke was.
Yeah.
That's why there's nothing like seeing a movie in the cinema, right? Like, you can't.
Yeah.
I get that with Hindi films all the time, of course. Like, I know I love that added layer of the relevance of the language, the specificity of the language. Even if I don't know what it is, I know that it's happening, and I that's so special. One of the few, I would say, criticisms I've seen of this film is that it doesn't do very well by its women characters. And since we're the Filmi Ladies podcast, I'm kind of wondering what you think about that. I did read that women are not allowed to participate in these or perform these rituals, so that maybe is part of it. But I'm wondering what other thoughts you have on that, if you agree.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan. There were really only three women characters in this movie. There was the lead's Shiva's mom, and basically she only has one thing to do. She's very disappointed in her son. He has decided that he's not going to do his family's practice of like their job is basically to be the performer. Like they put on the outfit and everything and they do the dance, and he's decided he's not going to do it. So it's his cousin who does it. So he's basically given up, and he's basically portrayed as a scoundrel. Like he just gets drunk and he hunts wild boar. He's basically a good for nothing. And his mom's only role in the movie is to run around with him with a chuddy and yell at him and bemoan the day he was born. So she was very stereotypical, I guess, very one note. Then there was the landlord's wife, who has only one expression where she just blankly has to like look at you like that in her nice sari and the bindi and everything. I did like her saris, I will say. And then there was the character of Leela, who is the young girl that Shiva clearly has a crush on, and it's she feels the same way about him. And she plays this girl who's ambitious and she wants to join the forestry department, and then she's put in a position where they're her people and the forestry department is against them. I mean, I felt like her character was kind of one-dimensional as well. It was okay, but I didn't necessarily feel like she could have done more, given that she's supposedly a very young and very raw person. I mean, you can't expect her character. I think it would actually be ridiculous if she suddenly showed a lot of spine and went on a rampage against the forestry department. Like, you kind of expect her to just sort of like toe the line. Given what her role was, I thought she did a decent job. But yeah, the movie definitely is not one that, I mean, if you're going to compare it to say something like Ponniyin Selvan, you're going to be disappointed. So I don't know to what extent to excuse that, because I would have liked at least his mom to have some layer or some depth to her, and she didn't. It's what it is. Yeah, I mean, I can see how that would be a criticism, but I also don't know how they could have fixed it. What do you think, Nihit?
I actually slightly disagree with you on the Leela character. But speaking of the mother first, yeah, she's she's basically, there are three stereotypes of women. One is the hysterical mother, which every 70s, 80s Bollywood movie has had. She's constantly angry. Like, I don't think she knows another expression or she knows another mood to be in. She's just constantly angry.
Wakes up angry.
Yeah, I don't know why her son has won the bull race. Like, please congratulate him. Please be happy. Do something, you know. The landlord's wife, I think, is just like the stereotype of women being in the background and just being a fly on the wall.
Shut up and be pretty.
Like, shut up and be. Yeah, exactly. And then the Leela character, actually, I was surprised that in spite of a movie that talks so well about these political issues, these caste issues, these land ownership issues, you still have scenes where the hero is pinching her waist. Yeah. And she's very not interested in him to begin with. So the point I want to disagree with is that she has a crush on him. That's just implied, I think, in the way that most Hindi films imply it, and most South films especially imply it, that, oh, because he's interested in her, she has to be interested in him. There is no other. How can she not? He's the hero of the film. Exactly. So there are these very, very cringe scenes where he's trying to come on to her, just like physically, like being very abusive, and he's saying anything to her that he wishes, and he's pinching her waist and stuff like that. So all of that is still very, very cringe. But for a larger point, yeah, they have put the female lead of the film, they've given her an occupation, which is a great, I mean, that the bar is so low now that just giving the heroine an occupation is such an achievement. And then they've put her in the middle of the conflict. At least she has the moral dilemma of being on the forest department side, but also being a villager. And then where do her loyalties lie? And nobody understanding how torn she is between the two things. So as the movie progresses, her character starts to gain a spine. But before that, she's just like used and abused for the hero's pleasure, which is so cringe. And the other criticism, I think, Beth, which has come out now on, like, I read a few threads about it on Twitter yesterday, actually, which is the director and actor Rishabh Shetty has, I think, said some really cringe things about caste in India, and said stuff like, I have not seen these interviews. I'm going by the tweets that claim that he said these things in the interviews, but he's apparently said that caste doesn't exist. Caste issues don't exist anymore in contemporary India, and it's a thing of the past. So he's been getting a lot of brickbats for that in the last couple of days, I think, just in the last couple of days. So I guess he's speaking from a place of privilege where obviously if he doesn't go through those issues, he will assume that they don't exist anymore. And the other also Twitter thread that I was reading was about how this particular tribe, this particular folklore that these people have taken off of, it doesn't really have anything to do with Vishnu and the Varaha avatar. Like, the deity does not have anything to do with the Vishnu avatar, but they've just kind of collated both of them for dramatic purposes. So there are like a few issues like that, which are again so specific to Kannada culture, which are so specific, like we won't know right from wrong, because we are watching it as an audience, and only people who are in the know and people who belong to the community would know about these things. But that aside, as a larger storytelling device, if they've taken those creative liberties, I think they've mostly worked in the favor of the film. So I don't know. Like, the female representation is an issue, but I don't know to what extent the issue of merging the deity with Vishnu and all of that, I don't know how important that is.
I will say one thing about the caste issue. Sorry, Beth, I see
No,
you
no,
like
you're
going.
good. You're good.
I mean, I think again, one of the things about the movie is that, see, I do live in a bit of a bubble, because even though I am Indian, I've lived in America now for 22 years. And even in India, I live in Mumbai. Like, that's where my family is. And, you know, we're liberal, we're progressive. We don't really know about how these issues work, like, you know, day to day. So being the dum-dum that I am, when I was watching the movie, I was just wondering, I was like, why, you know, why are they always eating outdoors, and why do they never enter the landlord's house? And I was like, oh, you know, he's just like a hooligan and he just likes to eat outdoors, like al fresco. It never struck me that it was about casteism, and because it's so not something that I experience or encounter in my daily life. And then that scene where he makes a big deal about like actually entering the landlord's house, it took 2 seconds for my brain to switch on and go, oh shit, the reason he never enters the house is because he's not from high enough caste. And that just made my heart sink, because it was such a horrible moment for me. I was like, you piece of shit landlord. But it just, I think that's also, I don't know how many people had the same experience I did, but I did like how visceral that moment was for me, because that moment was so awful. And it's very disappointing to hear if this guy is saying that those issues don't exist anymore, because like I said, they don't exist in my daily life because I happen to live in California. But to assume that they don't exist because they don't happen to you is like, honestly, that's like such a jerk thing to say. But that moment was definitely a very powerful one for me, because it definitely like pierced my bubble a little bit as well. I thought it was very well done. Go on, Beth.
Oh, well, so if there are other points you'd like to make, we should, but I want to be sure we let Nihit talk about the climax, which even from Twitter, I understand is a big deal. I don't know what it is. So really, truly, spoilers ahoy, I think are coming. But talk to us about the climax.
Yeah, let's do that. But Beth, I don't think we can spoil anything for you, because the movie, it's not like a suspense murder mystery thriller, right? It's just an experience. So even though we talk about it right now, for people who haven't seen it, they are going to have that same kind of experience, because the movie sort of takes you along on the journey, and you can't help but be at that height of excitement when the climax happens. So that's just, I was just a little bit disappointed in the beginning with the climax, not because it's done very well. like cinematically, it's beautiful. It's unparalleled the way the climax is done. I was just a little disheartened that for a movie that is so clear about its politics, that is so clear about its rights from its wrongs, and for a large part of the movie, it makes coherent sense, storytelling wise. It is quite a coherent story. Then for the climax to become sort of supernatural, I was just a little taken out of it, that like that should not have been the resolution of this big issue. I'd rather the resolution be with the people than with a greater power. But having said that, I did think about it for 2 seconds, and then I was pushed back into the climax because the actor is so good, and everything that's happening it's so rousing that you can't help but go with the flow of the film. And my only slight reservation was that I wish they had a more sort of real world coherent solution to the problem, rather than him being possessed, essentially. Yeah.
I loved the climax. It was
Yeah.
so good. It was like I just did not know where it was going. And then, so basically what happens with is that, so there's this deity, right? And when they put on the garb of, the deity supposedly enters them or whatever. And yeah, and then it's like a blending of the human and the supernatural for the duration of that ritual or whatever. So that's like basically the concept. And he is fighting with the landlord and the bad guys who have decided that it's all out war, and it's looking like a complete standoff, and there's going to be so much bloodshed and gore and everything. And until then, it's like an actual fight. It's like the landlord's people and the villagers, and it's like a normal fight. And then at one point, the deity or the demigod kind of enters him, which has been his fate all his life, because that's what his dad and his granddad and everyone has done. And he has basically avoided and run away from that fate and given it off to his cousin and been like, you do this because I don't want to. And it's clear that that's his fate, because he also has these recurrent nightmares where it's thrust upon him and he's running away from it. So it's kind of his moment of resolution where he just has to accept that this is what you were born for, this is what your lineage is, and you can't run away from it anymore. And so the demigod kind of takes over, and man and God kind of become one. And then there's this insane performance. It's like a dance. It's like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's a spectacle. It's
an action sequence in the form of a dance.
Wow.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. But I like the fact that it was supernatural, because the movie, I think from the get-go, is supernatural. I mean, the movie basically starts essentially with Shiva's father. So basically the men of this family, when they become one with that god, they essentially disappear. And Kantara literally means mystical forest. So they go out into the mystical forest and then poof, they're gone. And so given that the movie starts off supernaturally, I didn't really see how you couldn't end with it supernaturally. I didn't want a natural resolution, because I think the supernatural element can't be taken out of it, so I really loved it. And I can't remember the last time I watched a film where, you have this tradition in Hindi films of there's man and then there's God. We've all seen those films where Amitabh Bachchan is in the temple and he says, Bhagwan, maine aaj tak tumse kuch nahi manga, lekin aaj main mang raha hu. Like, you have Karan Arjun and the Kali dance, and, you have man here and God there. The blending of the two, I thought was just like, and like I said, the theater, it was pin drop silence. My husband was sitting right next to me, and until then, our seats were reclined and we're just enjoying the movie. He was like this. Straight. He literally said he forgot how to breathe. And I think if they had maybe done a natural resolution, like you said, Nihit, then I don't think it would have had that impact. And I think it was masterfully done, because I would be afraid to touch something like that with a barge pole. I mean, not that I'm a director or anything, but I would be scared to even tackle it, because you have to do it so well. So it was just amazing for me. Yeah.
Do you remember the end of Ray's Devi? Like, you're making me think of that, when she becomes the goddess at the end of that film and she just leaves.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
And it's very unnerving. And
at the end too, he starts running off into the forest, and I was like, oh shit, he's gonna do it. going to have the same fate his dad did. And they definitely foreshadowed that, because you see a scene of Leela. So this final dance is clearly a few months after, because you see Leela is heavily pregnant at this point. And so I think they've also implied that now that he has basically passed on the genes of his lineage, now it's time for him to go into the Kantara, the mythical forest, and go poof. And then his son will grow up and do this. Maybe that's why his mom is so bitter, okay? Because like her husband did that, and now her son's gonna do that.
Yeah,
Like
like
the lady is bitter for this reason, okay?
all of the men in her life are disappearing in the
Yeah.
forest. What else do you expect her to do?
Exactly.
Fair
And
enough.
meanwhile, she's left doing all the chores and cooking and cleaning. So like I feel like her bitterness is justified.
Okay, so we are redeeming one female character at least.
Yes. We're giving a little bit of a pass. It's not like she can go to Fremont on a Tuesday night and watch a movie theater and eat samosa.
Yeah, firstly, yeah.
This movie sounds really amazing. Is there anything else that either of you would like to say about it before we kind of wrap up? I mean, I'm going to see it the moment I possibly can, for sure. It just sounds fantastic.
Try to see it on the biggest
Go ahead.
screen possible, because you're probably going to watch it on either Netflix or one of these shows one of the platforms. But try to get like the biggest screen possible to watch the film. That's my only advice.
I had asked on Instagram if people who have seen the movie had any thoughts that they wanted to share. And I just wanted to share what Sayukta said. She loved the movie, the cinematography. I love the cinematography. It's so pretty. The color palette is gorgeous. And she said that like Kannada movies haven't been worth a watch in recent years due to having very crass and mass appealing comedy. So this one went way beyond. And I did agree with her where she said that she felt a couple of the fights could have been reduced for the duration. I did feel like the editing could have been tighter. And she said that the part of Shiva getting angry at the drop of a hat was a tad too much, or him just screaming at everyone. I did notice that as well, although it just honestly made me laugh and giggle. And it reminded me a little bit of Bachchan's, 70s angry young man angst. Like this guy was just like a raging bull, basically, which is so funny because he has those bullocks. Like he just gets mad at the drop of a hat, but I think in like Tamil parlance, he would be basically a rowdy. So it worked for me. And then Sheetal said that Shetty dominance in Kannada industry is breaking some serious ground. This is something I've heard about, that the Shettys, Rishabh Shetty, who wrote, directed, and he's acted, he's the lead in this movie, plays Shiva. Apparently, Kannada film is enjoying some sort of resurgence thanks to these brothers, where they've been doing a lot of really like groundbreaking, path-breaking cinema, and like they're kind of like single-handedly making the industry popular, which makes sense. I mean, this is the first Kannada movie I've ever watched. And I'm excited to see what else the Shettys have to be. As long as it's not Rohit Shetty, I'm not about Rohit Shetty dominance.
Yeah, but they have been doing some really good work. There's a movie, I am going to not remember the entire name of the movie because it's 4 words in Kannada. So it's
Garuda Vahan something, right? Yeah. My husband saw that when he was raving about it.
Yeah, so that's by this same person or the same guy.
And his brother.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's a movie called Pedro, which has been going around and doing very well in festival circuits. I think it's about the killing of a cow, from whatever I understood from the snippets and like from the little brochures of film festivals and stuff. But it's a very politically like charged movie, I think. So I don't see it releasing very soon in India, but it's done very well in the festival circuit. It's gone to some very big festivals, and that's also produced by the same brothers. So yeah, they've been doing some really good work as far as I can understand. My next project is to watch this Garud whatever film on Z5. Yeah.
Okay.
I love when you leave one film immediately wanting to know more about that region, those artists, those makers, whatever, like that, to have that momentum coming out of one. And obviously like Pitu was wanting to do research about the culture that this film is from and everything. Like this is clearly a lot of great stuff happening. Thank you both for being willing to go out and
I
see
have a
it
parting thought.
and tell us about it.
Oh.
Yeah, tell us your parting thought, please.
Both my partner and I were walking out of the film, and we went like almost simultaneously went like, "This is the better Shiva film."
Oh yeah, for sure.
If you have to watch a Shiva film, please watch Kantara and not the other one.
I've been saying the Brahmastra dialogue so much, by the way. They're like, Shiva, मैं आ रही हूँ. मैं आऊंगी तुम्हारे साथ. आ रही हूँ मैं,
Listen,
Shiva. Shiva, मैं आ रही हूँ.
somebody on my Insta stories just today posted that they watched the movie a third time in the theater just to count the number of Shivas, and there are 91 Shivas in the whole film.
Wow. Okay, first of all, that's dedication. I don't think even Beth and I are that dedicated. I don't see myself going to a movie theater to watch Brahmastra just to count the number of Shivas, but I salute this person and their work ethic.
Yeah.
Speaking of movies we're excited about, did y'all watch the trailer for Bhedia? Because I'm very excited and I need to talk about it with someone.
Yeah. But I think the VFX is very bad. It looked like a fake wolf.
It's Varun Dhawan being a werewolf. What more do you want? I need
No,
a
Varun Dhawan is very hot, and nobody's taking away from that. But if you just look at the wolf, it looks like like a video game wolf.
I feel like the snake, the CGI of the snake was also a little bit bad. But I'm very excited
That
for
has been posting that meme every day
which meme?
of the snake coming out of his boxers. It comes out of his boxers.
Yeah, I know.
Classy. Well, our friend Sujoy was talking about how this is the makeup level from Janoon,
Oh yes.
which I do love.
Do you know, I know. I do have
But which
an
is bad for 2022.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what was fun, y'all? Also, do you remember Jani Dushman? That was good too. I've seen Jani Dushman so many times. It's my cousin's favorite movie. She has it on DVD.
Really?
Love this dedication also. This is more dedication than somebody watching Brahmastra third time.
I remember from Jani Dushman. So, like, the avalanche in that movie happens because I don't know if it happens because of this, but because there is not a lot of like causal relationships in that film. It's very like you just have to leave your brain aside and watch that movie. But there's Manisha Koirala doing Bharatnatyam, very, very, very bad Bharatnatyam, and then the avalanche happens. So my cousin Prachi was like obsessed with Jani Dushman. She has it on DVD. It was her favorite movie ever. And when she would come home after a really long day at work, she would just watch it for fun. I remember one time she just was very happy and she just burst into the Manisha Koirala dance, and all of us cousins were watching her like, what are you doing? And she just started doing that. And she was like, this is my Manisha Koirala avalanche dance. And we were like, you need an intervention. You have watched this movie. But imagine filmmaker. There is a random girl in Mumbai who gets so much joy from your film that she bursts into the Manisha Koirala avalanche dance. Now that's a job well done.
That movie is very popular among people who are new to Bollywood in my generation of us anyway. Like that somehow that movie was, I mean, it was in DVD shops, I guess, but we're all like the skeleton.
Yes.
Right.
Well, thank you both for sharing your thoughts about this amazing movie. I can't wait to see it. Nihit, last time you were here, we forgot to ask you, is there any project upcoming that you would like to plug to our listeners? Do you want to point people to your Twitter or your Instagram?
Okay, so you guys will do that anyway in your posts,
We will.
and you'll put my hand away. But my film Dobaaraa just dropped on Netflix, so please just go and watch Dobaaraa.
Yes. We definitely will. We got a lot of direct messages actually where people were like, where do I watch Phir Kabhi? And then I texted you as well, Nihit, and people wanted to know where to watch it. So
Phir Kabhi is still doing its festival circuit. We are next going to the Dharamshala International Film Festival from 3rd November to 6th November. and very excited about that. I'm going to go to the Dharamshala with the film, and a lot of friends have films in the festival, so it's going to be like a big Bombay gathering in Dharamshala.
Nice.
But yeah, so after that, I don't know when it will come out on the OTT platforms, but we do have a lot of screenings in Bombay. Especially we keep doing these screenings with short film clubs, and we did one at the Soho House, and then a lot of these things keep happening. So just keep a track of it on my page or my producer's page, or yeah, that's the best way to watch it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just remember, when you go to Dharamshala, don't do the Manisha Koirala dance. We don't need an avalanche.
No, do the dance.
Beth is very evil today. I don't know what got into her.
It's 10:30 at night. I'm really squirrely.
It's the Bhedia in you.
That's right.
You're off to the Kantara. You're off to the mystical forest, Beth. All right. Well, thank you for watching.
End this podcast by just disappearing.
Everyone just turn off your camera.
Yeah.
You won't say any goodbyes or anything. There'll be this blinding light, and then be like. All right. Well, thank you for watching this episode of Filmi Ladies. We will be back next week. We publish an episode every Tuesday. We are on YouTube. We are on Spotify. We are on Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere. We're in your heart. We're in your home. We're in your forests. Send us your comments. We do reply to them. Like our episodes, share our episodes, force your friends and family to subscribe to us, because we're awesome and we think you're awesome because you listen to us. Thank you for watching. Bye.
Bye.